Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about tariffs, trade tariffs generally, but particularly in relation to President-elect Trump's pronouncements on tariffs and you know how tariffs will be used, what percentages of tariffs, and so on. Just a recap for those who maybe don't know it. A tariff is like a tax on. Well, it's not really a tax. So that's the wrong word. A levy that's put on imported goods. So if goods are being, say they're being brought in from China, for example, brought in from China to the US, then the US government, assuming a tariff's put in place, the US government say, okay, well, that item has $100 of value, as in on the manifest, the invoice. It's $100 of value for that item, and we're going to slap 25% on top of that. So it's now 100. So what's referred to in international trade as landed costs. So landed in the country that you're going to sell it in. Then it's now gone from $100 to $125, given the $25 or the 25% rather tariff. So that's a simple explanation for it. So then the importers, and it might be a component that goes into a bigger piece of kit, or it could be a finished product or whatever. But that item now attracts a 25% tariff. So it costs now $125 to land instead of the hitherto $100, and so that needs to be factored into the selling price. Now, what often happens in reality is, especially if it's in a competitive sector of the economy, and President Trump seems to be focused on creating a much more classical, market competition, particularly in consumer goods, which is a good thing, by the way. That will benefit everybody. Then the Chinese exporter needs to either accept a lesser margin, lesser profit back in China, which is fine. Maybe that makes them become more efficient in their production. Maybe they produce better quality goods, so they can go at a higher price point, with better quality products with more features and benefits and so on. So it creates can create multiple realignments in product quality, profit expectation, and so on. So we're just following on with this. So the $100 item from China is now $125, but the Chinese company may choose to reduce their profit by $15, for example. So instead of $100, it's 85. Then 25% 85 means the price is now 107. I'm doing maths off the top of my head here. $107. So really, the price only moves $7 now. Now the distributor in the United States may decide, well, look, I'll actually reduce my profit margin as well. So the product ends up being roughly the same price. It just people are accepting lesser profit, or they're being more efficient in their manufacturing or distribution and so on. So this is how it can go. So 25% tariff would rarely result in a 25% increase in price, unless there was a very capped, effectively a monopoly or an oligopoly type market, where the consumer has just got nowhere else to go for this stuff, so they got to pay the extra. And in that case, the full cost may be passed on. But that would be a very rare. And if there is such a monopoly or oligopoly situation, the antitrust folks in the government should move swiftly and decisively and aggressively to break up such a monopoly or oligopoly, or any situation where cartel pricing can occur. Now, in other uses for so the result is that it typically in a market competitive situation, you're unlikely to see a price increase given the tariffs put on, but it does create some good revenue for the government, and hopefully they would use that wisely to maybe promote local industries, things like that. Let's suppose that the tariff, even if it's 25% or 50% or more, 100%, doesn't matter. But tariff then can encourage American companies who've moved their manufacturing offshore to places like China or India or Mexico or wherever, to say, hey, with that tariff, it's now makes more sense for us to manufacture in the United States. So we'll create a world-class, best-of-breed, highly automated, lots of robots and everything factories plural in the United States. So the manufacturing comes back to the United States and creates all sorts of virtuous circles of employment. So if you've got all the factories, all those robots, then you need guys to technically maintain and support the robots. It gives a shot in the arm to the local robot building industry and automation and so on. So it can have a very virtuous sort of wider effect across the economy. And that's a good thing. So American companies may decide to bring their manufacturing back to the United States. And this is very much, I think, part of President Trump's thinking when he's talking about tariffs and how they'll be used. Now, America has always, and I've mentioned this before, that I discovered this, came across it accidentally years ago, where America uses its huge economic clout. And bear in mind that between a fifth and a quarter of the world economy is still America. So America uses its huge economic clout to strong arm various countries into doing what America wants. And over the last 30 odd years, that what America wants has been the globalist project. So countries have been strong-armed into falling in line with the globalist project, mass migration and climate change hysteria and so on, because that's what the globalists wanted. And they infiltrated the America first, and then used that clout to browbeat and strong-arm and threaten other countries. And so I've mentioned this a number of times before, but I was sitting next to a guy. This is a flight going from New York to Florida or Dallas, Fort Worth, something like that. And he was part of the trade negotiation team for some Caribbean island. Not a huge one, but none of the islands there are huge. But he's one of the smaller ones, I don't know, St. Kitts or something. And he was just the son of one of the local mafia goons. He didn't know jack shit about trade, but he assumed that the trade talks in the meeting about trade would actually discuss trade. And he said that, and he was still bewildered by it. And the meetings must have been only a day or two previously. And he just, because I was a nobody from Australia, so I think he unburdened himself, if you like, to me. But he thought it was very strange that they go to these trade talks and all the American trade negotiators wanted to talk about is you've got to set up gay, lesbian counselling services in town. You've got to set up divorce courts. You've got to make sure women get custody. You've got to set up child support agencies. You've got to throw men in prison who don't pay child support. And so all these sort of social engineering type things, they had nothing to do with trade, not even slightly to do with trade. And so, and then they were threatened, and this is the bit that sort of intrigued him probably more than anything. They were threatened, well, if you don't do what we want, no more cruise ships are going to stop at your island. We'll make sure no cruise ships stop at your island. Now, these cruise ships are going around the Caribbean. The tourist trade is a huge part of the local economy. And without those cruise ships stopping, they'd be in a lot of trouble economically. So the threat of stopping the cruise ships from coming is a serious threat for them. And they also, they on the island, they do, sugar or something, whatever it is they grow on the island, which is their primary agricultural staple. And America buys that sugar at top of the market prices. So that's a huge boon to their economy as well. And they're threatened, but we won't buy your sugar anymore. I'm not sure if it's sugar, I think it was, but so they've got no choice. They can't argue it, and the Americans wouldn't accept any negotiation. You will do this. That is how it's going to be. If you don't, you're fucked. And that was the attitude. And he was surprised by this. And my dumb question was, didn't they want to talk about trade though? No, didn't even come up once in discuss, other than the threats. Didn't come up once. He said so. He's a black guy with that thick, Caribbean accent, and so and at the time I thought so. America's been using for the last, easily 30, 35 years. They've been using their economic clout to force globalization on the rest of the world, the globalist project. And this now includes, or recently has included, politicization of the justice system, politicization of jurisprudence generally, as we can now see in the United Kingdom and Germany, for example, France too. And so hopefully President Trump will use now the clout of the United States in reverse to unravel, to undo the globalization thing. For example, all right, Britain, you're going to stop all migration will stop. Otherwise, you'll get 100% tariff on all your stuff. I'm not suggesting that should or shouldn't be the case. But now also we need to consider that President Trump, being a businessman and particularly being in the kill or be killed world of property development, he knows how to open a negotiating position or the point of, the starting point of discussion, if you will. And so some of this talk about tariffs is really to bring people to the table. And if there are unfair trading practices, which, by the way, there's a lot of, then tariffs can be, okay, if you don't stop your unfair trading practices, we'll slap a tariff on you. And so, often in many cases, those countries will stop the unfair trading practice. Now, the unfair trading practices could be running an artificially cheap currency exchange rate to artificially give the countries a benefit in trade pricing. China, for example, they engage in that. Or other countries too, Pakistan, whatever, to say, no, you can't do that anymore. If you want to trade with us, it's on the merits and the quality of your product, not that you've got shitloads of cheap peasant labor. That's not going to be the playing field anymore. And you need to understand that. But also trade practices such as stealing American intellectual property and selling shoddy goods or in the case of there's a tariff on China, the Chinese just route their products through, say, Mexico or Canada in order to get to the US. That can be jumped on. Tariffs can be put on there. So tariffs can bring countries to the table to negotiate a reasonable trade agreement. And the tariffs may not be imposed, or they may be temporarily imposed, but the main purpose is to correct an anomaly and to bring the parties to the table. And if they refuse to come to the table to discuss, then they get the tariff, which fixes the anomaly anyway. I would say this, and I've said this in other videos as well, that tariffs to protect local manufacturers must be used only if the companies that are being protected guarantee to provide world-class quality product at a competitive price. They can't use the tariffs to be protected from competition. They can't use it just to become lazy and hopeless, produce low quality product and then line the pockets of sleazy, lazy, useless CEOs and so on. That mustn't be it. And so tariffs, I think, are a good thing. I think they have a place. A lot of countries are engaging in unfair trade practices, or they're giving huge tax breaks or backdoor subsidies to various manufacturers, which artificially allow their product to be sold far more cheaply in the American market. Everybody wants to sell their product in the huge consumer market that's the United States. Everybody, and they'll break all sorts of rules and engage in all sorts of dirty tricks to do it. So the incoming administration of President Trump hopefully can put a stop to a lot of this, and tariffs are a very necessary, very worthwhile tool for doing it. You've been a Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.